Guten Tag und herzlich willkommen zu unserem heutigen Webinar. Mein Name ist Laura Corneli und ich werde Sie heute in diesem Thema begleiten. Hello and welcome to today's call. I'm excited to be here and talk with you about why innovation is a performance driver. As discussed or as already teasered at the beginning, we're going to have this call in English and German language. The language is mostly going to be in English, but I'm going to start off with a little German introduction. Ja, nochmal herzlich willkommen von meiner Seite. Ich freue mich, dass Sie heute sich dazugeschaltet haben und wieder dabei sind bei uns in unserer Scope Portfolio Management Call. Wir sprechen heute über das Thema Innovation als Performance-Treiber. Und wie bereits angekündigt, wird der Call auf Englisch und Deutsch stattfinden. Das bedeutet von unserer Seite, dass wir vor allen Dingen uns auf Englisch unterhalten werden, vor allen Dingen mit meinem heutigen Gast gemeinsam. Aber gerne werde ich mir zwischendurch immer die Zeit nehmen und auf Englisch wechseln, um die Key Points oder das Wichtigste, was gerade besprochen wurde, zusammenzufassen. So, und damit würde ich nochmal wieder ins Englische zurückgehen. I would like to give a very warm welcome to Antoine Hamoir. Today he's here with me to discuss it. How are you doing? Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Great. So maybe let's start off casually with you introducing yourself in 1 to 2 sentences, your position as Candriam and what you're doing currently.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. So my name is Antoine Hamoir. I've been working at Kendriam for more than 70 years now, so a long time ago, where I started my career there, actually. I managed several SRI strategy till 2012, when I joined the Fundamental European Equity team, where with a team and other people, I focused on the innovation fund, rethink about the process, and be part of the investment team that managed the portfolio.
Great. Very nice to have you here with us today. Thank you. So I would like to start with the agenda for today's call, give you a quick introduction what the topic is going to be today. If you should have any questions in between, you're very welcome to use the chat box on your right-hand side, and we're going to try to cover all the questions that you raised during the call at the end in our Q&A question. So first, we're going to start off with a little introduction on innovation funds and how they're doing compared to their peers. In the second point, Antoine is going to talk about the opportunities that innovation funds give for the investors or can give to investors. Afterwards, we're going to talk a little bit about the definition of innovation and how we can detect innovative companies. And after that, we're going to dive right into Antoine's fund, the Candriam Equities Europe Innovation. And we're going to finalize the call today with a little outlook that Antoine is going to give us on the developments on the innovative market. So what I did here and what you see in this slide is a little analysis from our side that we did. And what we did is we compared the peer group of equity world funds, and we took out all the innovation funds and saw and analyzed the performance over several different time frames. We did this because studies have repeatedly shown that innovative companies outperform the market, and especially in volatile market phases, innovative companies can exploit their competitive advantages. And this becomes quite clear here in this slide. We can see that over every time frame that we look at, from a 1 to 5 year basis, that the innovative funds, being in a light blue color, outperform their peers in the equity peer group, equity world peer group. And what becomes quite clear here is that especially in the last year, where we had, as everyone knows, quite the crisis year, the funds did particularly well compared to their peers. On the next slide, what we did is a similar approach to the last graph. We went a little bit more into detail. So here we do not only see the performance, but also some risk numbers that we compare. And we did not only look on a global scale, but also the European scale. And we see on a global level, and I highlighted this in a light green here for you to see which peer group did better in which time frame. So if we have a look at the performance on a global scale, the global peer group compared to the innovation funds in the same peer group, we see that the innovation funds outperform their peers on a 1 year and also 3-year basis. The same for the European, on a European scale. So if we compare the European peer group with the funds that have a innovative focus with their peers, we can see as well here that they are outperformed on most of the levels that we had a look at. Now let's switch to the volatility on a global scale. We see that the global funds had a lower volatility compared to the innovative funds. This is usually the case. If we see that we have a higher performance, then we see that we usually also have a higher risk in terms of volatility. But if we have a look here, and that's quite interesting on the European strategies, the innovative funds on a European level outperformed not only on the performance, but also on the volatility, meaning that the volatility was lower than their peers. We also, as a comparison, took the Sharpe ratio, which is the risk-adjusted performance. And here we see on global and European level the same, that they have a better Sharpe ratio or risk-adjusted performance than their peers on both scales. So before we dive in, and Antoine is going to shed some light on the question why innovative funds outperform their peers, I'm going to go back to that slide. I'm going to reference a little bit in German for our German audience and then come back to the next topic. Also was ich gerade erzählt habe, ist lediglich eine Analyse, die ich gefahren habe, ein Vergleich zwischen der Vergleichsgruppe globaler Fonds mit den Innovationsfonds in der gleichen Peer Group und das Gleiche nochmal auf europäischer Ebene. Und wir sehen hier sehr schön, dass die Innovationsfonds in der Performance-Seite ihre Peers outperformt haben und auf der Risikoseite mit der Volatilität, das ist zu erwarten, dass diese normalerweise auch dann entsprechend höher ist, wenn die Performance höher ist. Aber auf dem europäischen Level sehen wir, dass die europäischen Fonds auch eine niedrigere Volatilität und gleichzeitig eine höhere Performance eingefahren haben. Es scheint also so zu sein, dass Innovationsfonds ihre Vergleichsgruppe outperformen. Und jetzt wollen wir ein bisschen mehr ins Detail gehen, warum das der Fall sein kann. So, Antoine, I would like to ask you to explain a little bit the idea behind innovation funds and why they could have a positive impact for investors if they invest in them.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Laura. But first, we have been convinced for many years now at Kendriam that innovation is the best strategy for any companies, regardless its sector represent a huge opportunity for investors. Why is this? Well, for many years now, disruption has impacted all sectors of the economy. New challenges have occurred, creating threats, but also opportunities for companies with the right business model. Example of a new challenge, think about automation and digitalization of the industry. It has started with the industry 4.0. Now think that all the supply chains are automated from start to finish. There is the products that are designed into 3D, which is interesting now that it has accelerated and it is widespread in all sectors of the economy. Think about healthcare. In medical imaging, there are software based on artificial intelligence that can establish a diagnosis to help the doctors. The workflow in the labs is more and more automated from sample extraction to result. In the consumer space, there is the e-commerce, which is still a challenge for many, and the big data also here are used to personalize the experience and to make the marketing more precise. So my point is that the competition in this context has never been so fierce and so complex than now. And really only the companies that are at the forefront of the industry and that innovate will be able to build a sustainable competitive advantage that will fuel growth and profitability, not only for today, but above all for tomorrow.
Okay, that sounds really interesting. But when I think about innovation, what comes to my mind that it can be quite hard to define what is a innovative company. So maybe you could give us some insight on the definition of innovation that you and your team are following.
Yeah, that's very true, Laura. Because at the first sight, it's innovation. It's might be something not tangible, and how can we detect that? Because at the end, most of the companies we meet, they claim they are innovative. So how can we select the one that are real innovative on our criteria? Well, for me, the starting point of this is how we at Kendriam define innovation. We define it as something unique, a novelty that create interest for the client while also creating value for the company itself and its shareholder. This is an important definition because it means that innovation really must give a competitive advantage, must give pricing power, and have at the end of the day a commercial potential. And we are not especially here looking for the next Nobel Prize. We really want to have innovation that has commercial potential, that will move the needle in terms of profitability, in terms of growth.
So one could imagine, or maybe not really set apart innovation from technology. For me, that if I think about it, usually sounds like this would only be in the field of technology. Does that hold true for you, or can you also find it in other sectors?
Of course, we can find it in a lot of sectors, and we will see that also at the end of the presentation with the sector allocation of our strategy. But potentially in every sector, you can find it's not only about technology; it can be about a new product, a new service, a new drug, and can be potentially in every sector of the economy, of course.
Okay. Then maybe we could talk a little bit more about the way that you approach this definition and the framework that you're following.
Yeah, of course. How can we detect? We have a very broad European universe. So how can we detect the ones that are really innovative again on our criteria? Well, we can use, of course, some measurable indicators like research and development, like the level of capex that can be relevant. Also, the number of patents or the number of scientists. Some that can be relevant depending on the sector. And certainly, we will use this measure, but we will also distinguish between two kinds of innovation. On the left-hand side, the disruptive innovation, which will be actually quite easy to detect. Disruptive innovation is the creation of a new market, or is when an innovation completely reshuffles the card in terms of sales distribution or profit distribution in a sector. Example like you see include cloud computing, 3D printing, or also can be immuno-oncology for treating cancer, for instance. The thing is that this kind of innovation is quite uncommon. And that's why we will focus also on the right-hand side on incremental innovation, adding new functionalities to a product, adding new functionalities to a service. And potentially, this innovation can bring also something really interesting for the clients. That's our definition, and bring a lot of value for the company and the shareholders. I've put some example with lenses, for instance, can be sunglasses or ophthalmic lenses, whatever. Adding each year from plain vanilla lenses, adding each year new functionalities, anti-scratches, anti-fog, protecting from UV. Now also there are lenses protecting from the blue-violet light and the harmful light from the screen. There are also new glasses and new lenses that are terrific to prevent myopia progression to children. So and adding always new layers please the client and give pricing power to the one that innovate in this field. Also, you see an example with the car of tomorrow. more autonomous, more connected, that at the end is the result, the outcome of integrating incremental innovation and new functionalities.
To me, especially, and I think that maybe is the case for most, the disruptive innovation sound very interesting. Do you currently have a title in your portfolio where you would say this is one that falls under this definition?
Yeah, of course. In healthcare, for instance, we have companies that have been very innovative to find a disruptive treatment and then improve patient life and an outcome for patient, especially in the field of immuno-oncology. In medical equipment, also in this field, we have many that have found new instruments or new that are more automated, that are more precise to again to deliver a better outcome for patients. In IT, for instance, also obviously in the semiconductor, there are interesting development and disruptive technology out there. So yeah, definitely. But again, this is less common. Most of our investment are the incremental innovation because they are just more common to find. Disruptive is not the norm.
I can imagine. So maybe let's make this a little bit more tangible and dive deeper into your fund. Could you give us some facts about the fund, like when it was launched and the size, and of course a quick overview over the team, maybe?
Yeah, sure, and that's an important one because really here it's a team approach, and the team has been really instrumental to the success of the fund. You see that it's a broad team, quite stable and experimented. Really key when it comes to put in place and implement qualitative process, like it's the case here. The fund actually has been created in 2008. Was managed by people who left company in 2012. At this time, Geoffroy Goden, that you can see on the top of the image, was appointed as head of the equity team, European equity team at Kendriam, and we decided to together with the team to rethink from a white page the process, and it's exactly what we did in 2012, 2013, implementing a new investment process, like I've started to explain, and I will continue in the following slide. Asset under management when we took over the fund was close to 50 million euro, and it's now more than close to 1.5 billion. So a huge success for us in terms of asset under management, because of the success of the fund and the performance that we have been able to deliver over the time.
Indeed. Maybe I would like to take this opportunity to wrap up some of the points that you just mentioned for our German audience.
Sure.
Perfekt. Also Antoine hat uns gerade dargelegt, dass Innovationsfonds meist als Treiber ihrer Marktsegmente wirken. Daher haben sie einen nachhaltigen Wettbewerbsvorteil gegenüber der Konkurrenz. Jetzt zum Schluss hat Antoine uns noch ein paar Stichpunkte über seinen Fonds gegeben. Dieser wurde 2012 etwas erneuert und von dem Team davor ging er über auf die momentan auch managen ihn und also Antoine Hamoir und Geoffrey Goden, die haben das übernommen, etwas umgedacht und managen das seitdem. Er hat besonders betont, dass es sich um einen Teamansatz handelt. Das heißt, es ist wichtig, dass da zusammengearbeitet wird, der Ideenaustausch in dem 12-köpfigen Team, das gemeinsam an dem Fonds arbeitet und insgesamt eine Investmenterfahrung von durchschnittlich 15 Jahren vorweisen kann, was auch im Vergleich zur Konkurrenz ein langer Zeitraum ist. So viel dazu. Jetzt würden wir gerne noch einen genaueren Blick auf die Strategie und den Prozess werfen. Antoine, let's talk a little bit more about your investment process.
Yep.
That's going to be the next slide.
Yeah, sure. But I've already touched on the main building blocks to detect innovation, but the job wouldn't be finished here, because we want not only innovative companies, but we want innovative companies with strong fundamentals. And that's why we use, and that has been the case from many years now at Kendriam, we use 5 criteria that are really the pillar of value creation in the long run. very rapidly the quality of the management, where we will assess the stability of the management. Is it a management that is shareholder friendly, good track record in terms of M&A, etc. You see also that for the quality of management, we definitely work with our independent and in-house SRI team, integrating ESG data and integrating the stakeholder analysis to assess the quality of the management. Business growth, obviously, we have the second criteria. We have a company that is naturally growing thanks to innovation, but it will be easier for them if their home turf, let's say, is favorable. And that's why we will ask company to play in a market growing above GDP. In a cycle, and here also we will favor companies that whose markets are benefiting from ESG trends like climate change, resource efficiency, or health and wellness, for instance. Then number 3, the competitive advantage. Obviously, in this strategy, the competitive advantage comes predominantly from innovation. You understood. Number 4, value creation, which goes well with our definition of innovation. Not only creating value for the company, but also for its shareholders. We will require company having profitability above cost of capital. And finally, criteria number 5, the financial leverage, which means that we will invest only in company with a strong balance sheet and cash flow generation, which is needed to invest in R&D and growth project. Every companies, and you can see on the bottom end of the chart, are valued with an in-house valuation model. Putting everything together, you can see on this chart that we start from a very broad, potentially a very broad investable universe in Europe. And with the combination of ESG, we can come back after this if you like, the combination of the financial analysis, the 5 criteria, and keeping only the company that are innovative on our criteria, with actually a very selective universe of only 65 company, more or less. And then we move to the final portfolio that will be calibrated depending on how well the company score to the 5 criteria, and depending also on the valuation that will impact the individual weights. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so maybe before we have a look on the next slide at the portfolio allocation, again, I would like to sum this up for our German audience, because these are very important points that you just mentioned. And then maybe I'm going to have 1 or 2 questions for you about the process.
Yep.
Also, was wir gerade gehört haben und was Antoine uns erzählt hat, ist, dass es sich um einen disziplinierten Anlageprozess handelt. Wir haben hier generell in der Struktur eine Kombination aus Innovations- und Fundamentalrahmen. Gleichzeitig, was wir vielleicht auch später noch mal ein bisschen näher erläutern können, haben wir hier ein ESG-Screening. Darauf wird mittlerweile auch sehr stark geachtet. Natürlich für viele Investoren auch ein wichtiger Punkt. Das Produkt ist ein Artikel 8-Produkt. Jetzt schon. Das Ergebnis ist ein Buy-and-Hold-Portfolio mit hoher Überzeugungskraft und typischerweise 40 bis 60 Aktien. Und jetzt würde ich Antoine einmal fragen, den Prozess vielleicht anhand eines Unternehmens einmal mit uns durchzusprechen, damit es ein bisschen bildlicher für uns wird. Antoine, maybe what you could do in order to make this a little bit more tangible is go through this process on the example of one company that you would have in the initial investment universe, in order for us to understand it a little bit more thoroughly.
Yeah, let me think about a company that would be a nice example. Yeah, but for instance, we have for many years now a stake. But let's speak about a German company as we are here in Germany. Siemens Healthineers, for instance, leading companies for medical imaging, at the forefront of new technology, at the forefront of using artificial intelligence to help, as I mentioned, to help doctor establishing first diagnosis, which is an example of a company fitting well, not only our innovative criteria, and they bring really something unique in terms of technology. They're leader in MRI for imaging, and leader in a lot of technology, bringing each year new technology. There are also fitting well our five criteria with a sound balance sheet, strong management team in place, etc. Fitting well the five criteria, and having overall an okay score on the SRI and ESG score. So everything is in place with this kind of company, for instance.
Okay, I see. Thank you for the example. So let's dive a little bit deeper into
Yeah.
the portfolio characteristics, maybe.
Yeah, but as you can see, the portfolio is the characteristic of quality growth portfolio, let's say, being structurally underweight value. So we are willing to pay a premium compared to the market, being also overweight growth, which makes sense, obviously. Maybe also interesting and relevant is the structural small size bias, which actually makes sense. It's easier for small companies that are that tend to be more focused, more agile, also to have innovation that will really make the difference at for the growth, in terms of growth and in terms of profitability.
I'm afraid I didn't. I think I did the graph a little bit too tiny. By how many percent, maybe you can say
It's a,
the small size bias is?
it, it's in standard deviation compared to the benchmark, the
Mhm.
MSCI Europe. But
Mhm.
the scales and the number are not too relevant. What is relevant here is that we tend to have a lot of good ideas and good investment cases in the small and mid cap space.
I
Uh,
see. Okay.
and
Mhm.
that's the most relevant, because as I mentioned, they tend to be more focused, more agile, to deliver innovation that really make the difference at company level. While for
Mhm.
the big conglomerates, there might be one or two innovation, but sometimes not enough to move the needle at company level.
Interesting. And I think what is even with this size, I can see that there seemed to be a different or a breach in style. Maybe it's during the Corona crisis, if I see it correctly, when it comes to the value and growth aspects. Maybe you could relate a little bit to this.
But well, we are the let's say the engine for performance, and the reason for a stock to perform is not for us valuation. That's the quality of the business model that will be predominant for performance for us. Having said that, we are also disciplined. We use in-house valuation, and at some point where valuation is not anymore appealing and the risk reward is not good, it's also our responsibility to reduce weight, and that's what we have done a couple of months ago, and and that's why you can see that the value bias has been reduced, as well as the growth bias that has been reduced, as we have taken some benefits to the too expensive stock to reinvest in stock that still offer potential.
Mhm. Okay, so let's have a look how this looks like in the allocation compared to the benchmark, the MSCI Europe.
Yeah, but you can see that and it also something very stable over time, and that there is a good balance in terms of sector, also a good balance between more cyclical sector, let's say, but always with structural aspects thanks to innovation, like industrials, like IT or consumer discretionary, and maybe more defensive sector like the consumer staples or healthcare, for instance. You see also, and that's something that has been the case for more than 6 or 7 years now, that we have no investments in utilities, in energy, or in telecom. We do not claim that there is no innovation at all in this sector, but we do claim that there is no innovation fitting our definition of innovation, because there are other drivers like the commodity prices, like regulation, that are more relevant for these companies at the end of the day.
And this also applies to the financials, because we can see that the financials are quite underweight compared to the benchmark.
Yeah, true. Most of the financial, not all of them, because we have some companies that are more fintech platform that benefit from digitalization, of finance. But most of the banks, obviously, or classic, let's say, insurance company do not fit our innovation framework, and there are other drivers like the level of interest rate, exogenous factors that are more relevant for them than what they can put in place to sustain a competitive advantage.
Okay, so maybe let's support your explanations about the funds with some facts about its performance. And we can see here, I have to say, that it did particularly well, especially looking back at the complex market that we saw during the last year. And we can see how well this fund did in comparison with its peer group, and as well with the peer group index. So maybe you can relate a little bit to the numbers that we see here.
Good, strong performance, exactly, and that has accelerated in 2020 with the global pandemics. And I'd like to give 4 reasons for this, and that will be also a good transition to the outlook to conclude. First reason, the pandemic has been really a catalyst to accelerate all the trends I mentioned in my introduction. I mean, the trends that we've identified, like automation, e-commerce, remote control, all the trends that were nice to have suddenly become must-have in terms of when in a time of pandemic and global lockdown. Number 2. I say that innovation is really about understanding client needs and offering them a unique solution. Well, our companies understand better than anyone client needs and how they change over time. And definitely during the crisis, client change have changed very rapidly, and our companies tend to be very agile and can adapt rapidly supply chain, sell one day 100% in e-commerce, and 2 weeks after again in store, and they have the flexibility to manage that and to be better than the peers. Number 3, the use really of 5 criteria was important. Having only companies with strong management, with strong balance sheet that can continue to invest in R&D project that will fuel growth in the future, even in a time of crisis. And number 4, I would like to highlight also that we have a lot of companies that are part of the solution to tackle not only the health crisis, but also the climate and environment crisis. And it will be a good transition for the following slide and the outlook.
Okay, yeah, that sounds very interesting. But maybe before you will give us your outlook for the further development of the markets, I would like to sum up again some of the key points in German, if that is okay for you too.
Yeah, definitely.
Perfect. So what we discussed is not only the process of the fund, but in the end also here, that's still English, sorry. Also worüber wir gerade gesprochen haben, ist unter anderem der Prozess, in dem die Titel ausgewählt werden. Ich gehe mal eine Slide zurück, da kann man es nochmal, oder 2 Slides, da sieht man es nochmal von dem europäischen Investment-Universum an Anfang von 1400 Fonds über verschiedene Screening-Prozesse, unter anderem ESG, bis hin zu dem Portfolio von 40 bis 60 Titeln. Danach haben wir uns die Allokation des Portfolios etwas angeguckt. Ein interessanter Punkt, den Antoine gemacht hat, ist hier, dass wir viele Ideen werden generiert, vor allen Dingen im Small-Mid-Cap-Sektor. Das ist man nicht unbedingt gewöhnt, aber anscheinend ist es bei Innovationsfonds, dass hier viel passiert. Das kann man sich wahrscheinlich auch vorstellen, dass sich die Large-Cap-Companies unter Umständen auch mal ausruhen und dann nicht die Treiber sind, die für diesen Fonds interessant sind. Bei der Sektorallokation, die habe ich jetzt gerade nochmal ausgerufen, sehen wir, das ist auch sehr spannend, was er genannt hat, dass wir im Utilities, Energy und Communication Services haben wir ein starkes Underweight zur Benchmark. Die Benchmark ist hier der MSCI Europe. Und das liegt nicht daran, hat Antoine betont, dass es hier keine Innovation gibt, sondern dass die Definition, die angewendet wird von Innovation, nicht unbedingt passt für diese Sektoren, weshalb die aktuell nicht vertreten sind. So, zum Schluss sind wir noch mal eingegangen auf die Kennzahlen des Fonds. Natürlich ist es immer schön, sich sowas anzugucken oder anzuhören, wie der Prozess funktioniert, aber das nochmal festzumachen an den Kennzahlen ist sicherlich interessant für uns. Wir sehen hier ganz stark eine Outperformance gegenüber Peer Group, der europäischen Aktien Peer Group und deren Index, den ich eben schon genannt hatte, über mehrere Zeiträume hinweg, 1, 3 und 5 Jahre. Und was besonders erfreulich ist für Investoren, ist, dass nicht nur die Performance bedeutend besser war, sondern auch die Volatilität um einiges niedriger. Also auf beiden, sowohl der Performance als auch auf der Risikoseite, ein sehr gutes Bild abgegeben. Und es zeigt sich hier, das sehen Sie im unteren Teil der Folie, auch in unserem Rating, im Scope-Rating. Er hat ein A und befindet sich aktuell auf der Peer Group auf Rang 6 von 454. So, I'm going to switch back to English, and I would ask you, Antoine, maybe to give us a little bit a short outlook of the developments on the markets.
Yeah, and I'd like to finish on what I say about the solution to environment and health crisis, and all the reasons that have been in place for the good performance are still valid actually for the future, and that's why here's my outlook. The sign of climate change and all environmental issues are more and more visible, and the governments fortunately are aware of this, and the regulation are more and more stringent and clear. With, for instance, in Europe, a clear EU Green Deal with clear targets to 2030, but also over the world, the US also with the Biden administration have now an ambition plan. In China, they have the 5 years ambition to reduce energy consumption and carbon footprint. So all companies that find solution to improve environment in general and climate have clearly opportunities. Also, as I said, the COVID have changed our habits. I mean the need for better hygiene all over the world has become more evident, and it won't turn back. The added value of medical diagnostic is more clear. The working from home, as you can see, is still my case, but we will remain for longer and in a structural way. So. Again, it implies a lot of things in terms of automation, remote control, etc. And again, a lot of opportunities for growing. And finally, by the impact on the economy with a level of debt that was already certainly high, which is even higher now post the pandemic. We are still in the middle of it. Meaning that the room for maneuver to stimulate the economy will be limited, and there are many reasons to think that the growth potential will remain subdued. And in this context, and putting everything together, the companies that can offer visible structural growth in a world where the growth will be scarce and precious, this kind of company will continue to do well, we think.
Great. Okay. Thank you for this very interesting insight. And I'm sure I would love to ask more questions also about the points that you just mentioned, but unfortunately we are quite at the end of the time for our webinar. So maybe I would like to still, some questions came up for us. Thank you. If you still have more questions, let us know, as I said at the beginning, but maybe we can dive in right into some questions that you might answer, Antoine.
Yep.
One of them referring again to the financial sector that we touched on in the asset allocation before, and with the question what your expectations are when it comes to innovations in the financial sector.
But that is, yes, something that we always keep in mind, and we monitor closely. As I said, the most innovative company is in the innovative trends. It's all about having a technology platform, online platform that are not only innovative but also that are more scalable in terms of cost structure, better understanding the clients through big data and a better algorithm like we have seen, and our investment or very teeny investment in the field fulfill this criteria, and we expect we expect this trend to continue, more digitalization, more data, etc.
I see. Maybe the second question I'm going to read because it's a little bit longer. The question is phrased, currently the market does not seem to favor innovation, meaning that value is outperforming, and with inflation fears coming up, market participants are avoiding expensive companies. So the question with that in mind is, how does this change your view on your fund and the strategy going forward?
Okay. First, I would like to say that I'm not a strategist. I'm not a macroeconomist. So it's but what I can say here, it's definitely what happened now. That's definitely something that more or less we anticipated because we saw in September and October that the valuation gap between quality stocks and the other stock, let's say, was higher than ever in the past. The position also among investors was in one way with the pandemics. Most of the PMs and most of the companies investing in quality stock, let's say. So it was something that should happen at one point. Or view, let's say, is that most of the travel has been done with people reallocating and readjusting their anticipation to the inflation anticipation. But my point is here that with this kind of strategy, we do not adapt. Okay, what we do is when definitely one stock is too expensive, we reduce, and when it's definitely too expensive, we see 25-30% downside, we sell all the position because we feel it's not responsible. But having said that, we will still comply to our investment process, and we will always buy top quality, whatever the environment. There is the short term, but and we have proven that in the past, because that's not the first value run. There was a value run in 2013, a value run in 2016. Typically, the length is 6 months, and after that, the market come back to more fundamentals, to the stock picking. And okay, in this category, I think we have shown some evidence that we can do well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Maybe I would say we have time for one more question that was raised, if that is okay for you too.
Yeah, definitely.
Perfect. The question was about your ESG screening and how and with what regards you included in the investment process, and what level or role of importance it plays for you and your team.
But it's a very important one. You know that ESG has really been part of Kendriam DNA for many years. The first aspect that I didn't mention, that we have an exclusion policy. first we exclude company based on 3 pillars. First pillar is the norms-based analysis, and we exclude companies that have infringed one of the 4 principles of the United Nations. Number 2, we exclude companies that are involved in controversial activities, like armaments, for instance. We exclude companies involved in unconventional weapons, but also, and that's more unique, conventional weapons. We exclude tobacco for many years. We exclude thermal coal, some part of the oil and gas, also the unconventional extraction. So a lot of activities that are excluded. That's number 2. And number 3, and that's more recent, we exclude the company with the worst ESG profile in Oscar. So roughly 20% of the universe in Europe is excluded just because of they are considered as high risk in terms of ESG. So that's the first part, avoiding the negative externalities from ESG, and definitely something that improves the long-term risk reward of the fund. And part number 2, as I briefly introduced, in our financial framework, the 5 criteria, we use our in-house ESG data to incorporate them into the investment process. When assessing the quality of the management, definitely we look at the stakeholder analysis. Looking at market growth, we look at the companies that are ideally placed in terms of sector activity. And also in the valuation model, the company with the best ESG profile have, all else being equal, a lower discount rate, because at the end they represent a lower risk than their peers. So that's in a nutshell how we integrate ESG in our investment process. Something really that we take seriously at Kendriam for many years.
I see. That's indeed quite sophisticated for a fund that is not marked as particular ESG funds, I have to say. Thank you so much, Antoine, for your time. Unfortunately, it's already over. And thank you for everyone who was listening today and joined us today. Again, if you should have any remaining questions, we were not able to answer all of them, unfortunately, in the time frame. But if you should have any remaining questions, just let us know. We're going to get in contact with you for sure. Thank you, Antoine, for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Und auch nochmal auf Deutsch, vielen Dank an unsere Zuhörer. Ich hoffe, wir sehen Sie in unserem nächsten Call diese Woche. Und ich wünsche Ihnen noch eine schöne Woche. Vielen Dank. Wiedersehen. Bye, Antoine.
Bye bye, take care.